What's going on, guys? It's Isaiah here, back with another video, my first reaction video on this channel. Today we're reacting to a video from Kai the Beach Kid. Great YouTube channel. I watch it all the time, specifically whenever I'm eating a meal. Great channel to react to. But we're gonna react to the 2021 season. Even though it was just a short 4 years ago, so many different things have changed throughout the landscape of the NFL. So we're gonna check it out today.
Return of fully fan-packed stadiums and the first ever 17-game season were on the horizon. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers brought back all 22 starters, something no Super Bowl winning team in the salary cap era had ever done. Tom Brady and Bruce Arians said, "Let's run it right back," and the question was whether anyone was actually built to stop them, because they humiliated the Chiefs in Super Bowl 55, making Mahomes run for his life all game. The Chiefs responded by
I think it's crazy how similar the two Chiefs Super Bowl losses have been. Both of them were blowouts. Like, you think about how the Chiefs won their 3 Super Bowls versus how they lost their 2 Super Bowls, right? They got blown out by the Buccaneers and Eagles, like embarrassed. The game was over by the second quarter, versus how close the 3 Super Bowls were, including the overtime win against San Francisco, right? The Jimmy Garoppolo miss in 2019, the very controversial ending to the Eagles Super Bowl back in 2022. So yeah, just random thought there.
completely rebuilding the offensive line, intending to reclaim their spot atop the NFL. The Aaron Rodgers drama consumed the offseason. The reigning MVP skipped OTAs, blasted the front office, and teased retirement. We were genuinely wondering whether he was going to be the host of Jeopardy or the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. But in late July, Rodgers returned with concessions. Green Bay traded for Randall Cobb, and Rodgers took the podium to vent about the organization. But the Los Angeles Rams...
Can my dad go from XL to M with walking by Halloween?
Rams,
ads are going to be very annoying, guys. I don't have YouTube Premium yet. I don't have that bad.
Trading for Matthew Stafford,
we're going to be in this together.
With elite talent but 0 playoff wins for Detroit. Sean McVay believed they could unlock another level for one another. The Rams pushed their chips to the middle of the table, future picks be damned. And in the AFC, the Bills were going all in. Josh Allen morphed into an MVP type in 2020 with the addition of
Stefon Diggs really took Josh Allen to another... That's a hot take, I know, right, guys? But what Stefon Diggs did for Josh Allen's development really is a testament to how good Stefon Diggs was. He's done it everywhere he's gone. He did it in Buffalo with Josh Allen now. He helped C.J. Stroud last year as a big red zone option. And now he's doing it with Drake May this year. So Stefon Diggs really made an impact everywhere he went, and obviously became an All-Pro in Buffalo.
Diggs, finishing 1 step short of the Super Bowl. The Bills brought back every major weapon, added Emmanuel Sanders, and extended Allen for $258 million. Meanwhile, tension simmered in Seattle. Russell Wilson publicly criticized the team, questioned his protection, and flirted with a trade. He stayed, but his relationship with Pete Carroll and the front office was
the weirdest relationship.
However, perhaps the biggest mystery team was Arizona. Kyler Murray entered year 3, and with a still elite DeAndre Hopkins, the Cardinals added J.J. Watt, A.J. Green, and James Conner. Head coach Cliff Kingsbury had weapons on both sides of the ball. Deshaun Watson, once seen as a top 5 QB and the Texans franchise cornerstone, now faced a litany of civil lawsuits after demanding a trade the previous winter. The Texans chose to keep him on the roster, but inactive, making it...
This was definitely a time to be alive. If you were... How do you even describe the Deshaun Watson situation in real time? Because, like, it felt like every single new Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport tweet was just about Deshaun Watson, and just like a new allegation. Like, it was kind of like Woj dropping trades at the trade deadline. It was just, Deshaun Watson got another one. It was crazy. And then before the allegations even started, of course, he requested the trade, and then those all dropped almost at the same time, like a month later. So it was kind of like, did he only request to get traded because he had so many accusations in the area, or did he actually just want to get out of Houston, right, for football reasons? At this point, I don't believe they were football reasons because of how many accusations there were.
Clear he would not take a snap in 2021. Houston was in full-on tank mode, and Jacksonville made the most interesting hire of all. Urban Meyer, most recently at Ohio State in 2018, but now coming out of retirement, was in charge of the generational #1 pick Trevor Lawrence, billed as the next Elway or Luck. But Lawrence wasn't alone. The Jets handed the keys to Zach Wilson at number 2 overall, a highlight reel thrower from BYU compared to Patrick Mahomes, tasked with reviving a dysfunctional franchise that had chewed through quarterbacks for a decade. Next, the 49ers traded 3 first-rounders to Miami to move up for Trey Lance at number 3, a raw but explosive North Dakota State dual-threat talent. Jimmy Garoppolo was still on the roster, creating an awkward standoff between a Super Bowl-capable starter and the allure of a sexier future.
I never understood the Trey Lance pick at the time. I'm sure he's going to dive deeper into this as the video goes on, but Trey Lance just never seemed like a Kyle Shanahan type of quarterback, you know? I really thought they were going to draft Mac Jones for the longest time, but, you know, Patrick Mahomes, aforementioned Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, those guys were really taking over the league at the time. So I'm sure Kyle Shanahan wanted his own version of that, but clearly he was just not a fit. Mac Jones, now he's the backup in San Francisco and kind of proved himself as a capable quarterback in the system. He would have been a much better fit. But they got Brock Purdy now in the same draft, so, well, a year later. But I guess it don't matter no more.
Then, in the midst of a historic 10-pick run consisting of Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Penei Sewell, J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, Devonta Smith, Micah Parsons, and Rashawn Slater, it seemed that Chicago had lucked into Justin Fields. A hyper-athletic QB in the same mold as Lance, but perhaps even more polished as a passer and underutilized as a runner in college. Fans believed he could free the Bears from decades of quarterback purgatory. But Matt Nagy's offensive scheme and a poor offensive line threatened his development. And Bill Belichick, after 1 year of Cam Newton and an uncharacteristic free agent spending spree, selected Mac Jones, a low-ceiling, high-floor Alabama passer designed to restore order just 2 years post-Brady.
This QB class was really
even
insane,
simpler,
though.
Cam Newton was cut outright. The 2021 draft dropped 5 potentially franchise-altering quarterbacks into the league's lap. But we were about to find out who, if anyone, could actually develop theirs. Even the AFC North had movement.
Looking back at this QB class, there was just so much talent, but I think, as he's going to get into, just situations mattered the most. Trevor Lawrence came in with Urban Meyer, a first-year NFL head coach, but proven college coach. Zach Wilson was just doomed from the start because he was on the Jets. Trey Lance probably had the best situation in front of him. Justin Fields, you know, whenever you're a first-round quarterback for the Chicago Bears, you're going to have high expectations because they've never, well, of course with Caleb Williams now that's changing, but throughout the history, they've never just had like the guy. So of course your expectations are always going to be sky high. And then of course, Mac Jones also had sky high expectations because he was the successor to Tom Brady, which it's just a whole bunch of pressure on its own, right? But of course, he had Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels, a proven duo. So he was arguably in the second best situation. Now, of course, the weapons around him weren't the best because we know how the Belichick system really affected the Patriots after Tom Brady left.
For a division where very little typically changes.
That's why Tom Brady left too.
The Ravens, battered by injuries before Week 1 even commenced, had confidence Lamar Jackson and a strong roster would weather the storm. The Browns, fresh off a playoff win, entered 2021 with real expectations and the hope that it was the beginning of something special with Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, and Myles Garrett. And Cincinnati, with Joe Burrow returning from an ACL tear that cut his rookie year short, hoped they would be able to protect their number 1 pick enough for him and LSU teammate Jamar Chase to carry them to new heights. From his same class, Tua struggled mightily in 2020, but Justin Herbert ascended to superstardom in the blink of an eye, throwing for over 4,300 yards and a rookie record 31 touchdowns. But if there was one player who was impervious to modern football trends, it was Derrick Henry. In 2020, Henry repeated as rushing champion, running for 2,027 yards while defenses knew exactly what was coming from a Titans team built completely around him and an efficient connection between Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown. This video is sponsored by Walter Picks. I first heard about Walter Picks.
I don't want to sit through this. We're gonna skip.
Brady entered a shootout with Dak
Prescott.
Oh
man, this game right here. As a Cowboys fan, this game gave us so much hope. I'm gonna let him talk though.
Who looked like he never missed a snap despite rehabbing a compound ankle fracture all offseason.
Prescott, man.
Prescott threw 58 times for over 400 yards and pushed Dallas to the brink of a massive upset. But with 124 left, Brady calmly drove down the field with the help of Gronk and Godwin to set up the Ryan Suckup game winner. The real takeaway, though, was how good the Cowboys looked.
Yep, I'm going to speak on that now because the year before, obviously, we were one of the worst teams in the NFL, right? Generational defense that somehow got worse in 2025, but generationally bad defense on the other side. Of course, Dak Prescott broke his ankle the year before, but this game it just gave Cowboys fans so much hope because Dak came out firing. CeeDee Lamb looked like he took the next step. Amari Cooper hit that big fade route in early, I think the second quarter, right? And we only lost that game because we couldn't punch it in the end zone late in the fourth quarter. And, whenever you give Brady the ball back, you're destined to lose. That's what makes him the greatest of all time. But, man, even Trevon Diggs got a pick in that game too. Everyone had high hopes for Trevon Diggs in the second round, and it looked like at least he was starting to break out a little bit. And then Micah Parsons was also just different, man.
Almost as good as Patrick Mahomes looked. In a playoff rematch with Cleveland, the Browns had their way for most of the game. But trailing 29-20, Mahomes floated the ball 50 yards in the air, cross-body to Tyreek Hill for a 75-yard touchdown. Part of a 23-7 second-half run, punctuated by the go-ahead and ultimately game-winning score to Kelsey. But the Packers season began in very unfortunate fashion. Aaron Rodgers played one of his worst games ever in a 38-3 blowout loss to the Saints, held in Jacksonville because of Hurricane.
I'm not a Saints fan, but I couldn't imagine the amount of delusion Saints fans were having after this game.
Ida.
Oh Rodgers threw 2 picks, this game
and Green Bay was of course labeled as a team that had spent too much of the
38-3, right? The Packers were in the NFC Championship the year before, right? 1 seed in the NFC, and they come out and get blown out by Jameis Winston and friends, right? It was I think year 1 of the post Drew Brees era. Jameis Winston was kind of the bridge quarterback, but they came in and killed them. And Jameis was hooping. He was hooping. It's my go, Jameis Winston.
Offseason arguing instead of preparing.
That's a W.
Jameis Winston, on the other hand, hit the Packers with 5 touchdown passes on just 148 yards,
Johnson,
adopting Sean Payton's efficient scheme over his chaotic nature. New Orleans looked impressive in week 1 of year 1 without Drew Brees. At the same time, Carolina surprised, opening 3-0 thanks to what appeared to be the beginning of a Sam Darnold redemption arc. But the team that sent the loudest message that first weekend was Arizona. Kyler Murray looked like a potential MVP, throwing 4 touchdowns while literally running circles around Tennessee. And Chandler Jones became the first player ever to record 3 sacks in the first quarter, ending with 5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles to put the Titans away. Arizona finished the month undefeated, and Kyler was the new ultra-dominant quarterback.
If you had Kyler Murray in fantasy
football, like Josh Allen, who had Buffalo positioned as a
he was putting up 25
pick.
Every week.
And even though they were upset by the Steelers in week 1, they moved on and won their next 4 in dominant fashion, notching 2 shutouts and outscoring opponents 156-41. September also gave everyone their first look at the pro version of the Joe Burrow-Jamar Chase duo. In week 1 against Minnesota, Chase torched Patrick Peterson for a 50-yard touchdown.
This throw was so huge because remember when Jamar Chase couldn't catch the ball?
Because of a few preseason drops.
Look at me, man.
Cincinnati beat the Vikings in OT and would start 3-1. And on Monday night of week 1, the Raiders-Ravens game.
I had so many fantasy agendas for this game specifically. 2 names I want to shout out real quick. This is real ball knowledge. Braylon Edwards. Right, I thought he was the next wide receiver 1 in, well, not Oakland. That was the first year in Las Vegas, but I thought he was next up. I thought he was like the Amari Cooper replacement, even wearing his own number, right? I thought he was going to be the guy with Derek Carr. And after he hit this game-winning touchdown, I was like, I was right. And he was on my fantasy team. Started him the next week, he flopped. So clearly I was wrong. And then Tyson Williams, T-Y-S-O-N, running back for the Ravens, he also went crazy this game. I thought he was next up. I think I ended up trading him like a week later, though, because, I'm a bit of a Vanessa. But yeah, a lot of agendas
3 different times before it actually ended. A near touchdown at the goal line, a tipped interception, and finally a walk-off touchdown from Carr to Zay Jones. Vegas then beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh and the Dolphins in overtime.
Zay Jones had the
Instead of 1-2, they escaped 3-0. But no one got away with wins more dramatically than the Ravens. After losing their top 2 backs and star corner Marcus Peters before week 1, they hosted the Chiefs in week 2. Down 35-30, Lamar led a fourth quarter game-winning touchdown drive to get his first victory over Mahomes 36-35. And in week 3 against Detroit, Lamar hit Sammy Watkins for 36 yards to convert a 4th and 19 down 1 with 26 seconds left. Then watch Justin Tucker boot an NFL record 66-yard field goal that hit the crossbar and bounced in. But the Rams didn't need that much
Fun
luck.
fact, just real quick, fun fact. In one of my college classes, broadcast journalism student, we had the technical director for CBS. Let me go back a little bit. We had the technical director for CBS come into our class and explain all the behind the scenes stuff that went into this moment right here. He explained how quick things work in a moment like this, because they had no timeouts, so like 20 seconds left. They hit the big pass to Sammy Watkins, like you mentioned, and then just they showed the reaction to Lamar Jackson kicking, Lamar Jackson didn't kick, Justin Tucker kicking that field goal in the control booth. It was crazy, y'all. If you ever work behind the scenes, you gotta be like, obviously you gotta pay attention, but you gotta be fast, like you gotta be quick. It's like camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, like you gotta be ready for everything in this game. There's a lot of intricate stuff that goes behind working
6-yard field goal
behind the
that
camera.
hit the crossbar and bounced in. But the Rams didn't need that much luck. In his LA debut, Stafford obliterated the Bears, then followed that by beating Tom Brady in Week 3. For the first time in a decade, people were asking whether Stafford was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if Cooper Kupp was now an elite wide receiver, and whether the Rams were the best team in the NFC. Not to be outdone, though, Derrick Henry, down 24-9 in Seattle, erupted for 182 yards and 3 touchdowns, dragging the Titans back from the dead in an OT win. And finally, the QBs of the future got their first sour taste of NFL action. Trevor Lawrence threw 7 picks in 3 games. Zach Wilson threw 4 interceptions against the Patriots alone. Trey Lance lurked in the background, entering only for special packages. Justin Fields was sacked 9 times in his first start. Mac Jones was the only one who looked remotely functional, even if painfully conservative and unimpressive. The Cardinals' defining win came in Week 4, when they went to LA and stomped the heavily favored Rams 37-20. It was at this moment that the league realized the Cardinals were clearly more than just a September story. Even when Cliff Kingsbury and several starters missed a game due to COVID protocols, Arizona still beat Cleveland in Week 6. They were the last undefeated team at 7-0. Kyler Murray was at the peak of his powers and front-runner for MVP. But to close October, they faced the red-hot Packers on Thursday night, where we got this legendary meme, and Green Bay held a 24-14 lead early in the 4th. Arizona mounted a late comeback, driving to the Green Bay end zone in the final seconds, but on a Kyler Murray pass to A.J. Green to win it, Green never turned around and Rasul Douglas picked it off, ending Arizona's perfect season.
I think it's crazy how much this affected Arizona's season, because after this game, everything fell apart for them. He's going to break it down a little bit later. I don't want to keep spoiling the video, but yeah,
worse,
Arizona just fell off after that
and Kyler
moment.
injured his ankle in the final minute.
I remember that too.
To
My
miss
fantasy
a few
team
weeks.
fell apart.
Plus, the Rams kept pace at 6-1. Stafford shredded Seattle on Thursday night, a game that also brought bad luck for Seattle when Russell Wilson...
Look at the knee. That's his finger. That's not the jerseys. Hold on. I didn't want to zoom in on that dislocated finger. Give me a second. There we go. Look at... No, stop. Wait. Hold on. I'm selling. That
stepped in and managed not to burn the whole thing down.
Show Geno
but
Smith.
with Wilson possibly out for
Screw
2 months, Seattle stumbled through the rest of October.
Whatever.
Meanwhile, the Packers erased all memories of their Week 1 disaster. Aaron Rodgers casually ripped off 7 straight wins. Even their chaotic overtime win over the Bengals, which was a comedy of missed field goals on both sides, added to their aura. At 7-1, the Packers were right back in the NFC's top tier, as were the Bucs, who mostly cruised through October, which included a win for Brady against Belichick in his return to New England. They suffered a loss to New Orleans in Week 8, but Jameis Winston tore his ACL in the same game.
This was one of the saddest moments I've ever watched, because Jameis Winston was just coming off the 2020 season a couple years ago. 30 for 30 season a couple years ago. Sat behind Drew Brees for a year, and he had his moment. He had his moment in New Orleans. It was a perfect fit. He was the city of New Orleans, just based on his personality. Then he tore his ACL. The Saints fell apart right after this. But man, this was supposed to be Jameis's breakout. He's supposed to get a long contract. I don't want to call him the future of New Orleans, but I think he could have been what Baker Mayfield was for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. I thought he was a perfect fit with Sean Payton, and I think this really led to the downfall of Sean Payton in New Orleans and all the stress he went through, and why he's in Denver right now, doing his thing.
Halting any momentum the 5-2 Saints had built up. And after starting 3-0, Carolina fell to 4-4 as Sam Darnold reverted to bad habits. So with Jameis done for the year and Carolina and Atlanta each at 4-4, Tampa Bay had all but locked up the NFC South by Halloween. The Cowboys barged through October behind a perfectly balanced offense and a defense fueled by the rise of Micah Parsons and the turnover magnet that was Trayvon Diggs, who had 7 interceptions and 2 pick sixes in 7 games. The peak of their euphoria to this point came in New England, where Dak hit CeeDee Lamb for a walk-off overtime touchdown. Another signature moment in a season full of them. Dallas was 6-1, while the Titans, humbled by the...
Man, one thing I remember about that start was how well Zeke was moving too, because like the first couple weeks of 2020 when he just like could not hang on to the ball, I think I could have fumbled less than Zeke during that run, but man, Zeke was moving so well. The offensive line was healthy for the first time in a long time, right? And that Dak was hooping too. I remember he was a leading candidate for MVP for like the first half of the year. Things were
Jets in week 4 so up. Responded with 6 straight wins, including one over the Bills on Monday night where Henry ran for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns. 6 days later, they hammered the Chiefs 27-3. Henry was every bit of his vintage dominant self and more, until he went down with a broken foot in week 8, posing a major challenge for Tennessee. And Kansas City looked shockingly mediocre. Through 8 weeks, Mahomes had nearly double the number of interceptions as he had in all of 2020, and KC was 4-4. But Baltimore wasn't exactly steamrolling teams either. After already stealing wins in September, they took it to another level in Week 5 on Monday night against the Colts. Down 22-3 late in the third, Lamar willed the Ravens to one of the season's best comebacks, throwing for 442 yards and 4 touchdowns, 2 of which went to Mark Andrews, who was emerging as arguably the best receiving tight end in the NFL. The Ravens won in OT for their 4th straight W. The most eye-popping moment of the month, though, happened Week 7 in Baltimore when Cincy hung 41 points on them. Chase went for 201 yards, and the Bengals briefly held the number 1 seed.
Arrival game. This was the moment where people were looking at him and putting him in top 5 conversation. He had like 55 fantasy points this week too. I mean, look what he did to Marlon Humphrey on this play. Let's go back a little bit. Let's find it. I'm not selling this time. Look at this.
On points
simple
on
slant
Chase went
catch.
For 201 yards,
nope,
and the
you're
Bengals
not
briefly held
3.
the number
That's
1
3.
seed
1,
in the
2,
AFC,
3.
something
3.
no one predicted when the year began. Justin Herbert entered the MVP picture after a 47-42 shootout win over the Browns, but the Ravens exposed them the following week in a 34-6 blowout. And in one of the most surreal off-field sagas in years, a series of leaked emails revealed comments from John Gruden that caused him to resign immediately. Yet, interim head coach Rich Bisaccia led them to 2 wins, reaching 5-2.
That Raiders team was so weird. John Gruden did everything in his power to make the Raiders what they were that year. It was even a shock that they were even 5-2. But Derek Carr is probably one of the most underappreciated quarterbacks. I don't want to say of the decade, but more like of my span of watching football. Derek Carr had some bad seasons, but this season Derek Carr was like the leader. Rich Bisaccia got the credit, but Derek Carr, man, the Raiders don't go 10-7 that year, even beating my Cowboys on Thanksgiving without Derek Carr and keeping that team afloat. Shout out to him.
But Buffalo appeared to be the actual best team in the AFC. They crushed Houston and Kansas City and likely would have beaten Tennessee if not for an agonizing failed quarterback sneak on 4th and 1. The Chiefs entered November with one of the worst defenses in the NFL, but it was at this time that they almost instantly flipped into an elite unit. They held the Packers to 7 points and the Raiders to 14 in a Patrick Mahomes 5-touchdown game. 1 month earlier, they were supposedly figured out by the league. But after Thanksgiving, the Chiefs were a solid 7-4. Meanwhile, the Rams were having a midseason crisis after starting 7-1. bullied by a Derrick Henry-less Titans where a 36-year-old Adrian Peterson was scoring on him, then blown out.
If anyone can find me a Titans not just the Titans, I don't want to say the other name, but Commanders Adrian Peterson jersey, Saints Adrian Peterson jersey, Titans Adrian Peterson jersey, and a Seahawks Adrian Peterson jersey, please let me know. I need it. Hold on a sec. I have it somewhere. I don't know. I have an Adrian Peterson jersey somewhere. Here it is. I need to start an Adrian Peterson jersey collection. We need to find every Adrian Peterson jersey and just hang them up in the Hall of Fame somewhere. Cardinals too. Remember Cardinals Adrian Peterson?
Out by San Francisco and gave up 36 to Green Bay. Stafford threw pick sixes in 3 straight games, and even the addition of Odell Beckham Jr., signed mid-season after leaving Cleveland, could not stop the slide. But the Patriots incredibly became the AFC.
I don't know why he hasn't gone in debt. Maybe he just hasn't yet, but the Odell situation in Cleveland was so funny because he had his dad on Twitter posting film of just Baker Mayfield, who was playing with his shoulder falling off the bone, mind you. I'll always defend that Baker Mayfield season, but of him just missing OBJ, that whole saga was funny.
AFC's most unstoppable force. Even in October, they'd hung 54 on the Jets, but Belichick's defense was practically impossible to score on at this point. With them allowing 6.5 points per game in November, Mac Jones didn't exactly need to be Superman. Yet, they beat the Browns 45-7, shut out the Falcons 25-0 on Thursday night, and beat the Titans 36-13. They were on what would become a 7-game win streak, as arguably the most complete team in football, and Belichick was getting his flowers again after missing the playoffs in 2020. Even better for them, the Bills took a rough 9-6 loss to the Jags.
The Bills used to have, well, they still just have like these mind-boggling losses. What do you mean you lost to Urban Meyer's Jacksonville Jaguars during this year? What are you talking about? You lost to Urban Meyer this year, and we're supposed to take you seriously as a Super Bowl contender. Like, they're still a good team, but they just take some weird losses. But also, this game for Jacksonville, I think this is the one. No. That's a different game.
Allen, the Bills quarterback, threw 2 interceptions. Josh Allen, the Jaguars pass rusher, sacked him, intercepted him, and recovered his fumble.
Hines Allen.
But the truly devastating blow came 2 weeks later during Jonathan Taylor's 5-touchdown masterpiece in Buffalo. Indianapolis ran for 264 yards, and Taylor had the title of best running back in the league and the MVP award in his crosshairs. Taylor's dominance became one of November's biggest stories. After an 0-3 start, Indy ran their way back into playoff contention by simply handing the ball to their superstar, who rushed for 139 yards a game and scored 9 touchdowns this month. Carson Wentz was inconsistent, but Taylor was so good he masked most of his flaws. And after John Gruden's departure in October, came Henry Ruggs' tragic DUI crash that took a woman's life and ended his NFL career. They were a mess off the field and on, going 1-3 this month. Similarly,
again, shout out to Derek Carr for keeping that team afloat, because who else would have got that team to the playoffs eventually? That was crazy.
The Lions kept finding new ways not to win. In Pittsburgh, they and the Steelers played one of the sloppiest games of the year, a 16-16 overtime tie. The Lions were still winless at 0-9-1. Cam Newton's return to Carolina briefly hijacked the league's imagination too. After signing mid-season because of an injured Darnold, he scored 2 touchdowns, playing a limited role in his first game. The Panthers upset the Cardinals that afternoon, and Cam felt like his 2015 MVP self until he lost the next 5 games as the starter, erasing.
So I remember that Panthers-Cardinals game very well, and I had lost Kyler Murray to injury, like he mentioned. When Kyler had that hamstring injury, I was like, crap, bro, I can't start him anymore. Like, he just wasn't the same, mobile quarterback he had been throughout, like, the first 8 games of the year. So I started Cam Newton against the Dolphins. What was his stat line? Like, 48 yards and 3 picks? It was so ridiculous, bro. Obviously, I lost that week. But dang, bro, Cam.
Any doubt that he was
his
not
arm was pulled
washed.
pork at that point.
Aaron Rodgers stirred up controversy for a COVID absence, where people's heads exploded upon the revelation that he actually had not taken the vaccine. Jordan Love made his first start in a 13-7 loss to Kansas City. Dallas started the month with a hideous 30-16 loss.
Don't talk about this game. Don't talk about this game. Oh man, it was the the Red Stripe Veterans Day game. This game was probably one of the most frustrating games I've ever watched as a Cowboys fan, and kind of told us everything we needed to know about the team, right? They got dominated. Don't even look at this 30-16 score and think there was a chance they could have won this game. No, we got killed from start to finish. It was bad. And this is when I think Vic Fangio said after the game that Kellen Moore's offense was easy work. That's light work. Like, we can figure that out. It's simple. It's elementary. Like, it has nothing against my cover. What does he run? A cover 2 shell look, right? We're locking that up.
Broncos, but bounced back by destroying Atlanta 43-3 before sputtering again versus Kansas City. And on Thanksgiving, they lost 36-33 in overtime to the Raiders.
So, first of all, this game, another game that pisses me off. Just the entire AFC West reign that we went through this year pissed me off. But Anthony Brown. You say that name and ears start bleeding all over Dallas. But it was just so frustrating because anytime we had that game, at least in the palm of our hands, right? Like, I'm on the team, but anytime we had it at the palm of our hands, just Anthony Brown would find a way to mess it up. And it started with 33-year-old Deshaun Jackson gashing us for an 80-yard touchdown, right? Like he's still in Philly? What are we doing, bro? But one thing I remember from these games, too, is that this is when Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb both missed time in critical moments of the season. And that's why we also fell off in these games. I'm saying that's why we lost.
Russell Wilson returned but lost all 3 November starts. And the Cardinals stayed atop the NFC because Colt McCoy won 2 big games in Kyler Murray's absence. So at the start of December, the Cardinals still held the NFC's best record at 10-2. And despite the fact that Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins had just returned from injury, their season began a free fall. In Week 13, they lost to the Rams on Monday night, then were on the receiving end of a 30-12 drubbing from the 1-win Detroit Lions, who had just recently picked up their first victory against a Vikings team that was mostly unnoteworthy outside of making the entire fan base hate Mike Zimmer. In the Cardinals-Rams game, though, DeAndre Hopkins tore his MCL, and looking back on it now, that injury marked the end of prime DeAndre Hopkins.
It really did.
The Cardinals went from front-runners to fool's gold. But Deebo Samuel had become the greatest Swiss Army knife in football as the 49ers surged. Their postseason hopes came down to Week 18 versus the Rams.
For how great, that was a really bad time to pause, but for how great Christian McCaffrey is now, he would have been nothing without what Kyle Shanahan did with Deebo this year. Because Christian McCaffrey was a great dual threat, but Deebo Samuel really set the tone in San Francisco, and that's what led to Christian McCaffrey even being traded to San Francisco in the first place.
17-0, Jimmy Garoppolo
it's also the worst thing that happened to
OT
Deebo.
Comeback to clinch a playoff berth. And the Chiefs continued to build on their resurgent November, annihilating the Raiders 48-9, then playing in one of the AFC's games of the year on Thursday night with the Chargers. This was the Kelce game. 191 yards and the walk-off touchdown in overtime.
God, man.
By Christmas,
look how Travis Kelce used to move. So fluid. He's like a broken down tractor now. Like, he can't do it.
Chiefs were headed for one of the top seeds as expected. Jonathan Taylor continued to take over the league, putting up one of the best running back seasons of the past 10 years. But in Week 18, Carson Wentz played terribly in Jacksonville and lost to the worst team in football, eliminating them from the playoffs. The Bills' December began with the Snow Globe game against New England, where Mac Jones beat them despite only throwing 3 passes. But after an overtime loss to Tampa the following week, the Bills won their final 4 games. Most importantly, a rematch with the Pats, where Josh Allen came through with a squeaky clean performance in Foxborough, regaining control of the AFC East. But in Green Bay, Rodgers was playing through a fractured toe. They beat the Rams, Bears, Ravens, and then the Browns on Christmas anyway, all while Rodgers ended the year on a run of 20 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. The Packers would clinch the NFC's #1 seed, and Rodgers won his 4th MVP.
First of all, I don't know why Aaron Rodgers grew out his hair in this era, bro. He looked like a 70s drug dealer. But, you know, outside of that, he was different, bro. And he was just doing this with Davante Adams. And Davante Adams was the best wide receiver in football at the time. But even when Davante Adams was getting doubled and bracketed, man, he would still make a play. He would find, geriatric Randall Cobb, or MVS was wide open somehow, or even like an old Martellus Bennett for some reason, he was still there doing it. And Aaron Jones too,
second in a row
in the passing game.
Dallas, meanwhile, became terrifying. Micah Parsons put together one of the best defensive rookie campaigns of all time, winning Defensive Rookie of the Year and finishing second in Defensive Player of the Year behind TJ Watt, who tied the single-season sack record with 22.5 in 15 games. For the Cowboys, though, Trayvon Diggs had the best ball-hawking season of the century, with 11 interceptions. And their best game was a 56-14 obliteration of the Washington football team on Sunday night that made them look like the NFC's most explosive team. They had the best offense in the league, a borderline top 5 defense, and finished 12-5. And what began as a messy passing offense for Philly turned into the most dominant rushing attack in the league. Nick Sirianni leaned into Jalen Hurts' strengths, and the Eagles clawed their way from 2-5 to a 9-8 wildcard team. In LA, the Rams rebounded well. Stafford's turnovers were still abundant, but that didn't stop him from throwing 41 touchdowns, and it didn't stop Cooper Kupp from winning the receiver triple crown with over 1,900 yards, 145 catches, and 16 touchdowns. Promising second-year running back Cam Akers also returned from a July.
Another one of my agendas, man. What could have been if he never tore his Achilles, man? What could have been? He was supposed to be so
and they won 5 of their last 6 to overtake Arizona for the NFC West. But no story in December hit harder than the Bengals announcing they should no longer be seen as underdog up-and-comers. Joe Burrow diced up the Ravens for 525 yards. A week later, Chase went for 266, and Burrow outplayed Mahomes with another 450 and 4 touchdowns.
No. He should have showed the whole play. He said, "Excuse me," and then outran everybody for 60.
Cincinnati was a legit contender as Burrow entered the elite tier, and Chase took home Offensive Rookie of the Year. However, the Titans, without Derrick Henry since Week 9 and missing A.J. Brown for a chunk of the month, saw their number one seed slipping away until Brown returned on Thursday night against the 49ers and single-handedly stopped their skid. Tennessee surged again and clinched the number 1 seed despite Derrick Henry missing the last 9 games, but he was set to return for the playoffs. Elsewhere in the conference, the Browns went a disappointing 8-9. Lamar got added to the Ravens' injury avalanche in Week 13, and they fell apart without him. The Steelers were kept alive by TJ Watt's superhuman efforts and 1-score wins, including Big Ben's emotional farewell at Heinz Field. The Raiders fought through a mountain of adversity, winning their final 4 games, namely an epic Week 18 overtime thriller over the Chargers and earning a wild card.
I'll never forget, why didn't the Chargers just elect to take the tie? They sold that. Who remembers that situation where the Chargers and Raiders could have just tied the game and they would have both made the playoffs? And I think the Steelers would have missed the playoffs. Another 9-8 or 9-7 season for Mike Tomlin, right? Over 500 though, but Brandon Staley was just a mystery, man. They could have easily both made the playoffs, but instead, I don't even know, man.
Dolphins rode one of the strangest arcs ever, going from 1-7 to 8-7, but Tua choked Week 17 in Tennessee, and that caused them to miss the playoffs. That same Week 17, Antonio Brown also gifted us with one of the most legendary implosions.
Why did he do this? You know, if Antonio Brown never does whatever this is, I think the Buccaneers could have gone back-to-back because they could have easily gone band for band with the Rams in the divisional game, which he'll go through later.
In NFL history against the Jets,
clearly his
where he
presence
stripped off
missing.
his jersey and pads, waved to the crowd, and jogged off the field
because
down
he wasn't getting
24-10 in the third quarter.
Like, I understand
that
losing to the
iconic
Jets,
stunt
but
ended his NFL
they still
career,
won the game.
but the
It's
Bucs
Tom
still
Brady.
came
You don't
back
lose
to
to
win.
the Jets
They finished
unless it's the
13-4 with
2010,
Tom Brady
2011
passing for over
playoffs.
5,300 yards and 43 touchdowns at age 44.
Before he talks about that game, Cowboys fans, never mind. Go ahead.
Joe Burrow kicked off Super Wildcard Weekend by treating his first playoff game like a national coming-out party, while the Raiders merely tried to keep up. The game wasn't without controversy due to an inadvertent whistle on a Burrow touchdown that lingered in the aftermath, but nonetheless, Cincinnati won 26-19. Ending a postseason win drought older than Burrow himself, and
I'll never forget, this is my 3rd time shouting out Derek Carr, but he almost led the game-winning drive, man. It got picked on 4th and goal. It was a great play,
that this team could make a deep run.
I thought that
in
Raiders
Buffalo,
team
the
had
Bills
a run
unleashed one of the most perfect offensive games ever played. Against New England, Josh Allen engineered 7 touchdowns on 7 drives. The Patriots were stomped 47-17 in sub-zero wind chill, and the AFC East undoubtedly became the Bills' division. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay took care of business against the Eagles. Tom Brady dissected Philly's defense, and the Bucs took an overwhelming 31-0 lead before cruising to a 31-15 win. But the strangest game of the weekend was...
Here it is. Just play it, man. Just play it.
Was 49ers at Cowboys. San Francisco's defense sacked Dak 5 times, while Deebo Samuel and Eli Mitchell carried the offense to a 23-17 lead. But the ending became...
That was one of the worst starts the Cowboys could have gotten off to, because the offensive line was blocking like a 10U offensive line. They were just kind of standing there. They're just kind of going like, ugh. Right? Nick Bosa, no, don't do that. And, like, obviously he went through and sacked Dak like he does any other. Never mind. But, and then they just got ran into the ground by Deebo and Elijah Mitchell, of all players, right? It was embarrassing. But then, life was given, because Jimmy Garoppolo did some Jimmy Garoppolo things, threw a pick to Anthony Brown, right? It seemed like we were back into the game, but then, what
infamous
happens.
Cowboys lore. With seconds left, Prescott took off up the middle with no timeouts, and the clock expired before he could spike it, though a 23-yard touchdown with 1 second left would have been unlikely anyway.
Life was not real. Life was just genuinely not real. This broke my spirit. The glimmer I once had in my eyes for any Cowboys football, it dimmed, and it has not turned back bright since this game. This genuinely broke, 17-year-old me, 18-year-old me? Oh my gosh. To this day, why are we running a QB draw with no timeouts left? The boundaries are guarded. Dak Prescott could not move like that anymore. And granted, he got like 12 yards on the play because everyone's 20 yards back, but... Oh, man. Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy, man. Just situational masterclasses from those two at all times. Oh, my gosh. That team was supposed to be special, man. It was supposed to be the 1 seed
in Kansas City, the Steelers briefly led 7-0 on a T.J. Watt defensive touchdown.
It gets worse, by
the way.
It gets much worse.
And it has 5 touchdown passes in 11 minutes of game time, booting Big Ben out of the NFL entirely. And finally, Rams-Cardinals on Monday night. Kyler Murray completed Arizona's collapse with his worst game as a pro. A pick-6 panic throw from his own end zone, 0 offensive rhythm, and a 34-11 loss. Matthew Stafford won his first career playoff game with ease. The 21 divisional round became the gold standard for playoff weekends. 4 games, 4 walk-off finishes. And it opened in Nashville, where the top-seeded Titans unleashed their pass rush on Joe Burrow to the tune of 9 sacks. And still, with the game tied late, Ryan Tannehill threw his 3rd interception of the day, setting up rookie kicker Evan McPherson, who told teammates that it looks like we're going to the AFC Championship, before drilling a 52-yard walk-off. Cincinnati advanced 19-16, eliminating the number 1 seed. On a frigid night in Green Bay, both offenses struggled, but trailing 10-3 with under 5 minutes left, the Niners blocked a punt for a touchdown, forced another punt, then drove just far enough for playoff assassin Robbie Gould to hit the game-winning kick as time expired.
If Robbie Gould was on the other side of your favorite team's playoff game, you were losing. I don't think he's ever missed a field goal in the playoffs. I'm pretty sure that's Robbie Gould's side. He has not missed a field goal in playoff time. He is hitting it. He is the definition of ice in his veins. If he goes in warm weather, he will melt because there was ice in his veins. He was different.
Rodgers MVP season up in smoke. Next up in Tampa, Los Angeles jumped ahead 27-3 before Tom Brady started to think it was Super Bowl 52, miraculously coming all the way back to tie the game at 27. But with seconds left, Stafford hit Cooper Kupp on the absolute clutchest of back-to-back clutch throws. A 20-yarder, then 44-yard shot to set up the walk-off field goal.
To this day, why was Tampa Bay in a cover 0 look, Todd Bowles? Because he was the defensive coordinator at the time, and now Tampa Bay fans are still at his head, like wanting him to get fired. At this moment, January 7th at 12:59 p.m., he has not been fired, but it's just decisions like that as a defensive-minded coach. You have Cooper Kupp having one of the greatest wide receiver seasons of all time, and you leave him one-on-one with your 5'9" safety in Antoine Winfield Jr. And he just runs right past him on a little seam to ice the game. We were just not thinking here. They had no timeouts too.
Tampa would not repeat. Thinking. And finally, Bills-Chiefs. One of the greatest playoff games ever played. Gabriel Davis scoring 4 touchdowns. 4 lead changes in the final 2 minutes. Mahomes picking up 44 yards in 13 seconds to force overtime, where the Chiefs won the coin toss, marched downfield, and ended it 42-36. Every game ended on the final play. The NFL has never topped this weekend and maybe never will.
I was about to say, before he even started talking, that has to be the greatest week of football of all time. There is just no comparison. The Chiefs in the Bills game is one of the greatest football games ever played, right? Tom Brady almost completing another 28-3 type of comeback, one of the greatest football games ever played. Just the ending of Packers and 49ers, one of the greatest endings of the decade so far. Just banger after banger after. This is when the NFL had scriptwriter allegations. Y'all remember that? Because it was too good. It was too perfect. Like something you could only create if you sat down with a group of writers and came up with it at like 3 a.m. while on some substances, as one might say. But man, it was so different. That was peak life, except when the Cowboys lost on a QB slide. I will never forget that.
Championship Sunday began in Kansas City, where it looked like the Chiefs were about to cruise to a 3rd straight Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes dropped 21 points on the Bengals in the first half, but right before halftime, Kansas City botched a goal line sequence that would come back to haunt them. Cincinnati's offense slowly chipped away in the second half while the defense held strong. And late in the third, they tied the game, then even took a field goal lead in the fourth quarter. But with a 44-yard kick of his own, Harrison Butker sent it to overtime tied at 24, where the Chiefs won the coin toss, but Jesse...
I talk about this all the time. When people have complained about the cover 2 high shell look and how it's kind of ruined the game, right? There's no more exciting deep passes. This game is why, because every other team did that the following season in 2022. Because they thought they had figured out the Chiefs for good. It's also why I think Tyreek Hill was traded from the Chiefs. I don't think it's just the contract stuff or the $30 million per year he was asking for Kansas City. I think Kansas City saw this game and said, you know, Patrick Mahomes is great, but we want him to be even better. And I think him just knowing that Tyreek Hill is on the field and thinking he can make every single throw to him is almost hindering his game a little bit. It's almost holding him back. So we want him to be the perfect, you know, pocket passer type of quarterback that pick you apart, almost like a dink and dunk type of quarterback. And we don't need him throwing deep bombs to Tyreek Hill because it's gotten figured out now. That's why I think the Tyreek Hill era in Kansas City ended more than just the contract stuff. And then, of course, like I mentioned, it worked in Miami for a good amount of next season, but eventually it got figured out once it came to playoff time, especially in cold weather games like we've come to find out.
Bates tipped a deep ball into Von Bell's hands. Burrow then guided the Bengals into range for another McPherson walk-off. Bengals 27, Chiefs 24. Cincinnati punched a ticket to their first Super Bowl in 33 years. But the NFC title game...
And Bengals fans have been holding on to that win ever since, by the way. They will just not stop talking about it. People talk about the old head Cowboys fans flexing the Super Bowl rings. Bengals fans will never shut up about that AFC Championship game. You know, more power to them.
The game brought its own drama. As old buddies Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay squared off for the 3rd time this season. The Niners led 17-7 entering the 4th quarter, leaning on Deebo Samuel and their defensive front. But Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp refused to let such a special year go to waste. They connected for Kupp's 2nd touchdown of the day. Then, after tying it with a field goal, Stafford hit Kupp 2 more times on their next drive to set up the go-ahead kick. Jimmy Garoppolo responded with a pathetic and feeble 3-play possession that ended in an interception rather than going down the field and winning. Rams 20, 49ers 17. The Rams would be hosting the Bengals for Super Bowl 56 at home in SoFi Stadium.
One of the greatest Super Bowls ever.
Under the bright lights of Los Angeles, the Rams and Bengals walked in with 2 entirely different identities. One team had spent years in win-now mode, trading every draft pick they could spare for stars. The other, a disrespected franchise riding the meteoric rise of their young quarterback. But the Rams found pay dirt first. with Stafford placing a perfect pass to Odell Beckham Jr. in the end zone. Cooper Kupp added another touchdown to their lead early in the second quarter, but the Bengals countered immediately with a 75-yard drive culminating in a Joe Mixon touchdown pass to T. Higgins. And on LA's next possession, Beckham fell to the ground with a torn ACL while attempting to make a catch.
I think everybody my age kind of fell down to their knees when Odell tore his ACL this game because, of course, he was everyone's childhood hero. Everyone had the mohawk. Well, I didn't have the blonde, but I had the mohawk, right? Everyone was – it was no more Moss, right? Moss was like, hey, we're good. Randy Moss, we're good. We're Odelling it now. Like, we're catching it like this. Whenever you were throwing the ball with somebody, you would say, Odell me, right? It was that influential for Odell Beckham. He was on top of the world. And, of course, when he came back and was in a Super Bowl and was hooping, everybody my age was happy. We all just wanted to see Odell win a ring. And he might have won Super Bowl MVP here. It would have been an iconic moment, right? But, man, just wasn't meant to be to play the full game. But Odell Beckham's influence on the youth,
his night and his brilliant postseason was over.
It was perfect.
With OBJ out and the Rams having a completely dog-shit run game, the Bengals seized control. T. Higgins opened the second half with a 75-yard touchdown where the officials missed him tugging Jalen Ramsey to the ground by his face mask, giving Cincinnati a 17-13 lead. Then, on the very next play, Stafford threw an interception off Ben Skronik's hands. At this moment, the Bengals were firmly in the driver's seat. But the Aaron Donald-led Rams defense kept the game well within reach, logging 6 of their 7 Joe Burrow sacks from this point on. Still, if the Rams were going to retake the lead, it was going to depend on Stafford and Kupp, and their final drive was an all-timer. The Rams picked up the first on a 4th-and-1 jet sweep to Kupp at their own 30, and after 3 more Kupp grabs that got them to the red zone, he drew a defensive hold for a fresh set of downs and a goal to go.
That play is still controversial, right? Look at the bench reaction. Look at Joe Burrow. Like, that was still controversial in the moment. It's probably still controversial anywhere you go in Cincinnati. But at the end of the day, it was the right call. That's what I don't like. When a call just isn't like agreed, just like an obvious flag that everyone agrees with, it's going to be controversial in the moment just because of when it's happening. Like, it happened at the end of the game. Like I mentioned earlier, it happened with the Eagles in the Super Bowl with James Bradbury, right? But it's the right call, you know? Just, you don't like to see those, like, I don't want to call it bang, but, like, non-obvious plays be called. Like, you want to see them play, but...
Finally hauling in the fade that put LA ahead 23-20. Burrow got the ball...
And I think, on the other side of it, too, I think people would be pissed if the refs didn't make that call. Think about how many Rams fans, obviously, right, okay... Karma would have been crazy from the New Orleans Saints NFC Championship game three years earlier, but just think about how much controversy the refs would have been if they didn't make that call, because that's a whole.
And a chance to break 100%. The Rams' heart with 1:25 left. The exact situation you dream of for a legacy moment. But on 4th-and-1 near midfield, Aaron Donald ran right by his double team and spun Burrow around as he flung a desperate pass in Samaje Perine's direction that was really not that far off. If that had been caught and the Bengals had won, we would be talking about that play the same way we talk about David Tyree's helmet catch. But it hit the ground and the Rams were champions. Aaron Donald and Von Miller wrecked the game with 2 sacks apiece. Sean McVay at 36.
Everyone take a timeout. Everyone timeout. We all can be rich and famous football players, right?
Been caught and the Bengals had won, we would be talking about that play the same way we talk about David Tyree's helmet catch. But it hit the ground and the Rams were champions.
You have a good fade.
Aaron Donald.
What the heck is on the back? Why did he have a Dorito on the back of his head? Why am I just now figuring this out? How did I never notice this? He asked his barber for a Dorito on his neck.
The game with 2 sacks apiece. Sean McVay at 36
like a rat tail or
became the youngest coach in
that?
NFL history to win the Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford erased 12 years of Detroit loserdom, and Cooper Kupp capped the greatest start-to-finish receiver season in NFL history.
Yep.
The Triple Crown, Offensive Player of the Year, countless season-saving grabs throughout each round, and then Super Bowl 56 MVP.
Cooper Kupp will always be a big what-if for me, man. Not just because of this season, but one, what if he had Matthew Stafford from the start of his career And two, what if he never just went through a litany of injuries, right? Now, he's in another position to win a Super Bowl this year with the Seahawks, but man, the trajectory Cooper Kupp was on before the injuries hit when he had Matthew Stafford, he was going to be one of the all-time greats at wide receiver. The numbers were there. He was getting every single ball thrown his way. He was always open thanks to Sean McVay and his schemes, right? He was going to be a Hall of Fame wide receiver. But now he only has one Pro Bowl, one All-Pro to his name, and a Super Bowl MVP all in the same year. It's going to look so weird like in 5 years when you go to his Pro Football Reference page and you just see the one accoladed season with just those godly numbers, and then the rest is just kind of, it's not there. But if you lived in the moment and you knew how good Cooper Kupp was this year, you knew he was supposed to be that guy. Man, just put him in the Hall of Fame just for that season. Just for that season alone, man. It will never be replicated.
Perhaps the most lasting image was Joe Burrow standing on the sideline. The thought present in everyone's mind that the future of the league had arrived, and it wouldn't be the last time we saw him on this stage. Thank you for watching this video sponsored by Walt.
All right, y'all, that was my first reaction video on this channel. Thank you for checking it out. A little long, but it was a long video too. More reactions on the way, stuff like that as we continue to build the channel. I've been Isaiah. See y'all later.